Christine Peterson co-founded Foresight Institute in the 1980s, long before AI became mainstream. She has spent decades exploring how these transformative technologies can shape the long-term future. In this guest lecture, she joins Beatrice Erkers in conversation to discuss how advances in biotechnology and nanotechnology could revolutionize medicine, longevity, and material science, and how AI can accelerate these breakthroughs.
I'm very, very happy to have Christine Peterson with me today. Christine, let's just start. Tell us about yourself and what it is that you're working on.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Beatrice. I'm Christine Peterson. I am the co-founder of Foresight Institute, and Foresight attempts to guide technologies in positive directions, and we've been doing this since 1986. So we've been at it quite a while now, and we are involved in a number of different types of technologies, from nanotechnology to software like AI, space, and biotechnology and life extension. So we're involved in many different areas.
Yeah, perfect. And thank you for founding Foresight, where I work these days. So that's great. So could you tell us a bit about what sort of originally inspired you to focus on emerging technologies, and maybe a bit more about the technologies that you landed on, like nanotechnology and biotechnology in particular? Why have you dedicated your career to advancing those technologies?
Yeah, the reason that I and the other Foresight co-founder, Eric Drexler, got involved in this originally was that we were both students in college at MIT, and he was really the pioneer in the field of molecular nanotechnology, which is the design and study of atomically precise molecular machine systems. These are very similar in concept to the molecular machine systems in our bodies. Biology uses molecular machine systems all the time to build the structures and operate all biological systems. That's what they're based on. And what Eric came up with was the idea, well, couldn't we in principle build such things that were not biological, that were more like machines, that were artificial, man-made? And that was a revolutionary idea at the time. Now it's pretty widely accepted that this is beginning to happen and will continue to happen. But the reason why this was so important is that if you look at how we live today, the great majority of the benefits that we have from our civilized lifestyle, they come from technology. And technology is based on applied science. So in order to maintain our lavish lifestyles and also to heal the planet, we must learn how to use these molecular machine systems better. Everything we do is based on these types of technologies. So we need to learn how to use them in a responsible way to continue to advance the human adventure and also keep our environment the way it needs to be to support life in general.
How do you think, or how have you been thinking throughout your career on the balancing the major opportunities with the challenges and the risks of technology in general?
I think it's really important to acknowledge that there are challenges and risks to these technologies. It's easy to point at all the benefits we've had. It is increasingly, we also can point at some downsides. But just stopping is not an option. Technology continues to develop. And so the only real choice we have is to try to guide the development in the most positive ways we can. So one way to do that is to bring together the most cutting edge scientists and technologists and challenge them to take on a very positive goal. And because these are the best, they love a challenge and they love to work together. So that's the approach that we take, to try to take the very best minds, the most cutting edge workers, and help them get excited about the most positive goals possible.
And if we think positively, like in the next 10 years, maybe we take one technology at a time, but like if we think about biotechnology, what's the most like positive vision in 10 years that you can think that we've imagined?
Wow. I can imagine in biotechnology, we could make tremendous progress, especially if you combine biotech with AI. You can imagine tremendous progress in the field of medicine, first of all. In principle, we should be able to figure out a wide variety of diseases and how to not just treat them, but cure them, make them actually go away. So whether it'll be 10 years or longer, I don't know, but in principle, this is definitely possible. And that would even include in the aging process. The aging process is not something that is required by the laws of physics. It's just something that has happened to occur using biology. So in principle, that is approachable. 10 years, I think, is a little ambitious, but I think we will get there.
That's great. And if you think about nanotechnology in 10 years, like feasible, but like your most ambitious positive vision within 10 years.
Yeah, nanotechnology can play a big role in medicine, first of all. We may need very tiny devices to go in and make very tiny repairs into the body, and molecular nanotechnology could play a key role in that. And when you look at some of our other challenges, healing the planet, getting rid of chemical pollution, bringing the atmosphere into the state that we want it to be in, molecular nanotechnology can definitely do those things. Where again, the timing, 10 years, very ambitious, but in principle, these things can and will happen if we work very hard and are fortunate.
How do you think about, if you have any thoughts on like the intersection between AI advancing now and using AI for scientific research or development in general? What do you think is the most promising there right now?
I think in terms of looking at the field of medicine, the human body is the most complex thing in the universe as far as we know. And excuse me, it's going to require extraordinarily advanced software to have a deep understanding of human biology, in general, and more broadly, the ecosystem, including plants, all the plants and animals on our planet. So I think AI is going to be an extremely powerful tool for both for medicine, healing our bodies, and for the environment, healing the planet. I think it's going to make a huge difference because our puny little brains are not that great at handling the level of complexity that we're having to deal with here. And I think software and AI is going to be absolutely essential.
And one thing that we've touched on a bit in the course is like this narrative around AI is like we can tell that it's going to be impactful, and there's like a lot of discussion of the positives and the negatives. And I know that historically, and that you were sort of in that discussion as well, that nanotechnology used to be sort of at the center of these like utopian and dystopian visions. Do you have any lessons from how that played out that you think can help us navigate today's discourse on AI?
Oh, interesting question. I think one lesson that we saw in the early days of those debates in the nanotechnology area was that you just saw these extreme swings between extreme optimism and then terrible pessimism. And people would tend to go to one end or the other. And now, of course, now that we've had these ideas in our minds for a few decades, we see that the only sensible way to handle this is to try to hold multiple scenarios in your head at one time, not assume that, well, it's 100% obvious that it's going to go in the best direction, or it's 100% obvious it's going to go in the worst direction, but instead to actively explore multiple scenarios and then work toward the positive ones. while keeping a close eye on signs of any negativity developing and having sort of backup plans for what we do in those cases.
Yeah, that sounds great. Like that sounds like what we're trying to do, I guess, with the Existential Hope program. Yeah. How do you think about like how can we maybe better foster existential hope, or like how can we use this concept in the best way?
I think it's important, especially to reach out to young people, because I think they are currently being fed a tremendous amount of negativity and scary, doomy scenarios. It's not that they should never hear those. I think we all need to be aware those scenarios do exist, and we need to think seriously about them. But young people are not hearing the positive scenarios. And if they don't hear those, they don't know what to work towards. They don't know, well, what should I dedicate my life to? We need to make sure that positive scenarios are also reaching, especially our young people, and ideally integrating them into school curricula, college curricula, projects that the students work on. They need to have ambitious, positive goals because, as we all know, young people have tremendous energy. Let's help them direct that energy in ways that are going to build the future that they're going to want to live in.
Yeah, that's great. I think hopefully this course will also be able to provide some guidance on how people can start to engage. I think another thing that I'd like to just ask is another sort of framing that we've been using a bit in this course is this framing of like tool AI, meaning like AI as a tool that humans are very much in control of and using for specific narrow purposes, or AGI, basically, where it's more a very advanced artificial general intelligence that is just smarter and better at humans at most things. What do you think about that sort of framing? Is there any other like helpful way to think about it that you think of? And do you think that it's obvious that we should steer in one way or the other?
Well, I think it's a useful framework. It's probably not the only framework. It seems obvious that tool AI is going to be super useful, and it already exists, and it's going to continue to develop. I personally don't see how we can limit AI just to tool AI, even if that would be a good idea in principle. So, as we all know, there are huge debates right now about how close are we to reaching artificial general intelligence, or AGI, which would be a more human level, very flexible sort of intelligence compared to today's large language models, which have their limitations. So there's a big debate. It's a technical debate. As a layperson, I see no obvious reason why AI should not achieve these higher levels. There's no law of physics that says that you can't implement general intelligence on silicon as opposed to the way nature does it using carbon. There's no physical law there. So it's just a matter of time. And of course the debate rages. You see estimates anywhere from 2027 from those are some of the early estimates, the very soon estimates that you see, 2 centuries from now from skeptics, although those skeptics are getting fewer in number, okay? So we don't know when this will happen, but I personally don't see any way to make that not happen. So I think it's good to do what we said before, which is come up with a variety of scenarios and try to steer toward the positive ones while keeping our eyes open for any signs of the negative ones. And you can argue that we're already seeing a few negative signs, so we do need to jump on those.
Right, yeah. So I think that I've asked all my like most important questions. Is there anything that you think we've missed talking about that would be good to bring up in this context?
Well, if you want to talk about extremely ambitious, optimistic scenarios, if you combine, excuse me, if you combine advanced biology and advanced medicine with advanced molecular nanotechnology, you can make tremendous advances toward building a future that is extraordinarily positive by today's standards, that would, and just as we today enjoy tremendous wealth compared to, say, the Middle Ages, you can imagine people in the future, excuse me, could have tremendous wealth compared to us today. They could be tremendously healthy, have extremely long lifespans. And in principle, some of your listeners will have heard of cryonics, which is where people today who have reached the end of what medical science can do for them, they are near to clinical death, choose instead to be brought to very low temperatures and chemically preserved in the hope that someday in the far future, technology may be able to repair their bodies. And I think, again, there's no law of physics that says this can't happen. And I think someday it will happen. So although this is a very high variance bet to place, I don't see any reason not to try it.
It's worth taking the shot. And there's a great blog post by Tim Urban on this as well, called, I think, Why Cryonics Makes Sense, actually, for those who maybe get curious. But yeah, that's it. And I think that's a great note to end on, just like thinking like quite radically and really far out there, not just in this 10-year frame that we're mostly operating on in this course. So thank you so much, Christine.